And for me, it's something that resonates with me because we come here as immigrants. We have two realities. We want to support ourselves. We want to be able to achieve our dreams. And we also have come with the goal of supporting the people that we left behind.
That's right.
Enabling them to be able to also achieve their dreams, because we kind of like, we are an investment within our families, of immigrant families. People sacrifice for you to be able to go abroad and study so that you can be able to reap these benefits.
Right.
But then if everything that you're working for now goes to paying interest fees,
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast of Our Lives Narratives. Medan Production is happy to share that we are taking our lives narratives on the road. And today we are in Calgary, Alberta, meeting one of our first guests outside of Edmonton. We are so excited to get this conversation started. And thank you all so much for tuning in to today's episode. Today we do have a young entrepreneur by the name of Jonah. He's making strides in the finance world, in him and his team. And their goal is to enable to solve the problem of financial security for a lot of people out there. So you all help me welcome Jonah. Jonah, you are welcome to this podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be part of this conversation.
Awesome. We are so happy to have you on this platform today, and we can't wait for you to share all of your insights and all of the work that you have been doing along with your team. So let's dive right into it. Why don't you go ahead and tell listeners about yourself. Who is Jonah?
Yeah, no, my name is Jonah Chininga. I was born in Zambia, raised in Zimbabwe, which is in the southern part of Africa. I grew up in a big family of 11 kids, and then that shaped, I think, my sense of community and being around big groups, which was amazing. I came to Canada in 2014 and then went for university until my path, which has led me to studying Woveo. Which for me, it's a passion project where we are focusing on enabling immigrants, credit underserved communities, and low-income Canadians to be able to access affordable credit and build credit history using something as traditional as community savings. So happy to share more as we go along.
Amazing. Yeah. I know I'm already learning a lot about the work that you're doing, and I'm really happy for our viewers and listeners to tap into that information as well, because I know a lot of people there are already being impacted by it, and we need more people, individual and communities, to have knowledge about it and also benefit from it. So you mentioned that your dad made you a promise that if you did really well in school and passed your O levels, he would send you overseas to any country to study. So why don't you elaborate on that?
Yeah, no, I was very fortunate. So my father was an entrepreneur. He ran an agricultural business, and he was a big believer in education. He thought for him, the best thing that he could leave to his kids was quality education, because that's something that he didn't have. So one of the biggest things that he offered to all of us 11 kids, hey, if you do well in your O levels or A levels, you'll be able to choose a university of your choice that you can be able to attend to. So for me, in that time, I was looking at Canada, but the most popular destinations were always the UK, USA, Ireland, Australia, and then Canada was also coming out as an option. I did my research, and I think what was really interesting to me about Canada was life after university. Because even my father to me always said, I'm not sending you abroad to get the formal education. It's really the education around people build systems, how people build processes, the way they do things, how to become productive. So it's really everything around and the way people do things that you have to learn. So life after university was a priority for me when I was applying for that. So that's why I chose Canada. And I think it was one of the best decisions that I made.
I totally agree. Yeah. So if you are looking to relocate somewhere, consider Canada. If you're looking at studying overseas, we do have one of the best healthcare system. So it's quite peaceful and so diverse, especially in the province that we find ourselves, Alberta. So look up Alberta. All right, thanks so much, Jonah, for sharing that. So you arrived in Canada for school. Can you share with us what program you went through and what was your work experience like after?
Yeah. So I came to Canada and I came to study business and finance.
Yeah.
I still remember as a kid just seeing my parents being entrepreneurs. Even my teachers back then would always ask me, what do you want to do when you grow up? I always say, I want to be a businspirit.
Wow.
I didn't know what that meant, but I was just inspired from my family and seeing kind of like what they were doing.
Yeah.
So I came here just to study business, inspired by my family and finance. And that's what I was doing at the University of Prince Edward Island. So ended up in the smallest province in Canada, but which was really good for me because it's less distractions.
Right.
It's a very good university with a very strong and solid business program. And I did that for the 4 years that I was there as an international student. Although that process came with its own challenges with life as an immigrant, life as an international student. The education part was amazing, but then I think the life as an international student was a bit challenging, which really inspired us to be able to think of solutions like Woveo around financial security.
Well, I can attest to, because I lived in Halifax too, and during my first diploma, so I could because it's a smaller province, you are able to like focus a little bit more on education, and then most people want to leave after. But so fast forward, like you did mention though your work experience. I'll let you. Why don't you share that with our viewers? What your work experience was like after graduation?
After graduation, after graduation, I was a banker at a casino. So I worked as a banker at a casino. Usually, what you're doing on a day-to-day basis is managing payouts. So you have clients coming in, gambling, and then kind of like doing all that stuff. And as a banker, your responsibility was just ensuring that the cash flow, money coming in and money going out, it balances at the end of the day. I did that. It was good, but really I didn't feel satisfied. I didn't feel like I was living a life of purpose. And one day, I still remember back in 2018 in April, around summer 2018, I just woke up one day and I decided to quit my job. It was a very tough decision. No one supported me in making that decision. But I think it was probably one of the hardest but best decisions that I've made, just in terms of like being a believer in yourself and willing to take a risk, because I just knew what I was doing was not working for me.
Right.
So after that, just started looking into different things. Joined the Startup Zone, which was a business incubator in PI. So any entrepreneur was looking to be able to start a business and looking for different ideas could be part of that community. I think during that time, I had the opportunity to apply for the United Nations Youth Assembly.
Okay.
A friend just recommended it, like, hey, they invite 193 countries, youth from 193 countries. So you have like the United Nations Youth Assembly, and you do have the General Assembly, which is kind of like the presidents and whatnot. And I think that was probably a turning point in my entrepreneurial career, because going there and meeting other ambitious young people, seeing how we're having conversations around sustainable development goals, and just seeing kind of like how other people, there were 19, 20 building companies, was just really inspiring, and it really challenged me in terms of like what I could do and the pathway that I could pave for myself in terms of entrepreneurship.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I could see why you like, this is not for me. Because you wanted to be an entrepreneur since you were, since you were young, right? So, and you've seen your parents in that environment, that mindset. So I'm not surprised that you're like, no, I'm done.
But even to that too, like I think for me in my journey to entrepreneurship, I think probably just due to my Canadian experience, it came a bit earlier than what I would have predicted.
Right.
Just because like you come in, you're like, okay, I would finish school, and then after school, I'll probably work for someone just to be able to get that industry experience. But I think for me, going into entrepreneurship, it became a solution to two things. One, finding my purpose, but then two, a pathway to a better employment.
Right.
Right? Because being in PI, being an international student, no matter if you studied biology, computer science, business and finance, the number one job that you're most likely to get was a call center job. And that's a job that you could potentially do for the next 5 to 10 years.
Right.
And the job that you do earlier on in your career can sometimes determine the pathway that you take. So for me, I didn't want that path to be my pathway. It was just kind of like using case studies of other people who have been there around me, before me, just kind of like, oh, they came to uni, what are they doing now? The choices that they made, where did they take it? Where did they take them to? So I saw entrepreneurship as a pathway of actually creating a better employment for myself, which I know it was going to be hard, but I think I was building something that could be beneficial to other people as well.
Well, good for you, because yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
People don't like the time frame. The journey is short compared to what people are doing overall. So that was very brave.
Yeah.
Brave. Like you had your mindset, right? You were determined. You already had, wanted what you wanted to do. So good for you that you decided, I'm gonna follow my dream here, right? I'm gonna find purpose in what I will enjoy to do. So now let's talk about Woveo. So you and a set of people with same vision, same goal. Somehow you were blessed to come together to solve the problem of financial insecurity. You had mentioned you guys got together every day for a whole year. Wow. Talk about discipline. Why don't you walk us through that journey? I'm sure there were lots of frustrations, of course, little wins as well. But what was your motivation? Like, what kept you all grounded? Because having an idea as an individual is one thing, but getting 1, 2, 3 people together is a whole, different ball game. So why don't you walk us through that journey, that experience of coming together as a team, and that idea that gave birth to Woveo?
Yeah, no, I think the biggest inspiration for us as a team, so when we were starting out, it was myself, James, Daniel, Sergio, Meredith, just kind of like meeting and having conversations. And I think the biggest thing that brought us all together was shared experiences. We're all immigrants to Canada. We all had the shared experiences around financial insecurity. For me and Daniel and James, who came here as international students, was if your economic situation back home changes, you don't have any options. No bank is willing to lend you money. You're really exposed to high interest payday lenders. And you're only a student in low income. You haven't done anything terrible on your credit report, but that's the situation that you find yourself in. And then looking at that financial insecurity that impacted us personally, it was there's a better way to be able to solve this problem. So that's kind of like what encouraged and motivated us to, from the day one, like, okay, hey guys, what's our mission? What are we here? What are we doing? What are we trying to solve? And then we just stayed grounded to that mission. Even though how we operated the business could change or it could pivot, the mission always stayed the same, that we need to be able to provide a better financial security infrastructure to people who are credit underserved by the current system. So yeah, we did that for almost 14 months. Just because, you had to balance things out. Some of my co-founders had to work to be able to still take care of their obligations. They had families. For myself, I went the first 2 years, no salary, just trying to be able to bridge 1 or 2 things, because I knew focus was going to be the biggest enabler to get us from stage 1 to stage 2, right? Really finding something that you're really focused on. So we'd meet every day, 5:30 p.m., go through the kind of like what we had on a day-to-day basis until midnight, and then do that on every day, just being able to keep, because we believed that if we get this right, the market opportunity would be massive for the problem that we're trying to solve for.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing. So if you do have that idea, business, whatever it is that you're trying to pursue, you heard Jonah, discipline. Think about the goals that you're trying to get to. Forget everything else.
Yeah.
And just keep pushing. Thank you. So what is Woveo? Why don't you explain to us how communities and individuals are using it and how they're benefiting from your platform?
Yeah, so Woveo, we built a platform around a traditional community savings system. It's known as rotating savings, whereby communities pull their savings together and take turns accessing the lump sum, right? This is a system that is practiced by 1.4 billion people globally, mainly in developing nations. Some people know them as susus, some people know them as tandas, some people back home in Zimbabwe call them rounds. In Kenya, they call them chamas. But it's this system whereby like socially connected individuals just choose to be able to pull their funds together and take turns accessing that lump sum. So we're using group savings as a way to access affordable credit, interest-free credit. So let's say, for example, you have a group of 5 people. They're putting in each $200 a month. In that pool, there's $1,000. And that amount is taken on a periodic basis by one person until everyone is paid off. Right? So that was the traditional system. But then there were challenges with that traditional system, right? Because when we came to Canada, we saw that immigrants were using this system informally as a way to be able to solve those problems around financial security.
Right.
But then there were challenges with them working with the banks, right? If you walk to the bank, I received my payout, $5,000, $10,000, and you just go with the bank with that $10,000 cash, the bank has no visibility on where you received that money.
Right.
And then in some instances, people look at it as like fraudulent, right, from a banking perspective, because there's no visibility into the flow of funds. So that was one challenge. The second one was around repayment rates, right? What happens if someone doesn't pay? That's always that's always the biggest question around the system. It's a system that helps a lot of people, but then it has that risk that is involved when what happens if someone doesn't pay. But we also have to look at that life happens, emergencies happens, so someone may not be able to be able to meet their payment obligation within that community group, and there wasn't any protection or insurance that could be able to ensure that that person who was supposed to receive the payment would receive it. So we looked at those two key main problems from a Woveo perspective, and then we built a platform, which is a mobile application, that one, it provided an automated payment system. So if you're not working with the banks, you're able to see the flow of funds because it's automatically deducted from your bank. And if you're the one receiving it, it's automatically deposited into your bank account. So it's now part of the mainstream financial services system. Secondly, we're now able to innovate and then provide something that we call a default insurance protection. If someone doesn't pay, Woveo, us as a company, we step in and cover that payment, and that person now owes us. The same way you can also owe different lenders, you now owe us, and then you can be able to pay us with a separate payment plan. Right? So now you're giving people a peace of mind. Now you're giving people the trust infrastructure to be able to do this with a peace of mind that, hey, if I'm participating in this, I'm guaranteed to receive my money back. And then that's kind of like how we approached Woveo, and then building a solution around community savings and credit systems to enable people to access credit and then build credit history as well. So that's kind of like where we now took that transaction history, because if you look at it, some people are borrowing money and some people are saving. And then every time that they're doing that, that should be able to help them build their credit scores. So for us, it was like partnering with the credit bureaus such as Equifax, so that if you pay on time, that's helping you build your credit history. But then if you miss your payment, that's an incentive that I have to make my payment on time so that I can also build my credit score. So to summarize all of it, so Woveo, we focus on group savings, providing access to affordable credit and helping you build credit history through community savings.
Wow, that you guys are doing a lot. Because I know we call it Osusu in Sierra Leone. I think they say Susu in Nigeria. But there is always that risk. What if, primarily, what if one or two individuals are not able to make their payments on time? So it's kind of nice to have kind of like a backup, right? A buffer that can step in. Because when people are ready to have their money, they want it, right? They already have plans, and that's some of the reason why people get into these anyways. People are planning for kids' tuition, things like that, right? So really, when it's time, you really need to get your money. So it's nice that you guys have that. You thought about that risk factor, right? That you as a company can step into. And also the credit history parts, because we know everything is driven around credit. And being an international student then, when you're starting with nothing, right? So that's, you guys thought about that. Oh, if I had credits right on, or if I can start building credit early on, this will benefit me, in the long run. So that's quite amazing. If you somehow are watching this episode, research Woveo, look into what they're doing and see if it's something that might benefit you. I know I've learned a lot, and I'm learning a lot today. And when you have a great idea like this, you want to try it, and see what it's like, right? So I encourage you, keep an open mind, do your research, and see if it's something for you. All right.
And I can also just add one thing to it. I think it's also just people understanding the state of our finances as immigrants to Canada, by just being able to understand the deeper systemic problem that a lot of us are going through, whether we are aware or not. Right. So just to give some context, in Canada, there are 9 million people. So in a population of 40 million people, 9 million people have credit scores under 700. Majority of them being immigrants. And every time these individuals have to go and borrow money from the banks, one, they can't borrow from the big banks because already they are considered non-prime, quote unquote. And then every time that they have to access credit, they're paying between 25 to 47% in interest fees from the formal system. And if you can't qualify for that, you're now going to use payday lenders where you're paying 300% up to 600% in interest fees. And then collectively, on an annual basis, these individuals are paying $62 billion in interest fees. And for me, it's something that resonates with me because we come here as immigrants. We have two realities. We want to support ourselves. We want to be able to achieve our dreams. And we also have come with the goal of supporting the people that we left behind.
That's right.
Enabling them to be able to also achieve their dreams, because we are an investment within our families, immigrant families. People sacrifice for you to be able to go abroad and study, so that you can be able to reap these benefits.
Right.
But then if everything that you're working for now goes to paying interest fees, then it's a losing equation. You're losing at the end of the day. So for us, it's just, how do we still enable people to be able to still have that immigrant dream and actually realize it? And one component is just reducing the cost of borrowing, because everyone is just kind of like leveraging credit, whether it's to buy a house, to buy a car, to start a business. But it should be something that is affordable. It should be something that is sustainable. So that's kind of like how we saw the vision of community savings and credit playing a role in helping people kind of like have that pathway in terms of achieving and empowering their dreams. And one of the other solutions that we offer at Woveo, focusing mainly on financial emergencies, is what happens if I have any financial emergency and I need the money today, right? So now if you're participating in a group rotating savings, let's say I'm supposed to receive my payout in September, I can be able to borrow up to 50% of it today, right? So instead of me going to a payday lender, instead of me going to the high interest lenders, I'm able to just leverage this, which is interest free and low cost, and then be able to achieve those goals. And I think one important aspect to also address, because it always comes as questions like, oh, how is Woveo able to do this? How are you guys able to offer the default protection?
Right.
How do you guys make money? Just because we always want to be able to be transparent with everyone. So for us, how we're able to offer the default protection is we are a venture-backed company. So what that means is we're backed by reputable investors, Relay Ventures, BKR, and to date we have raised $3.5 million. So we use some of that funds to create the insurance that we provide to our members and customers in terms of like their transaction volume. And then as we grow and scale, we can be able to partner with the banks and the credit unions to be able to provide that insurance policy. And then the second piece for us, really our model is not based on interest fees. It's based on like a freemium membership where we have a free plan and a premium plan, whereby if you are doing the same things that you already do on your WhatsApp groups, where it's just kind of like 10 of us pulling in money together, you're able to do it on the Woveo platform for free with automated payments. And then now, if you want to be able to get the premium benefits, which we call the financial security benefits, is $10 per month, whereby you're able to build your credit history with your group rotating savings transactions. You're also able to have the default protection, right? So I'm transacting in larger amounts and I want to be protected in case of any emergency. And then you also have the ability to be able to access the cash advance, right? I'm saving, but then if I have an emergency, I can be able to draw down on what I've saved so far through this financial partner that I have. And then that's kind of like how we approach it in terms of building a sustainable business for both us, the company, as well as the consumers that we're trying to serve.
I'm glad that you addressed that, because people will be thinking,
yeah.
So yeah,
you're giving us all the good stuff.
Where'd you get your money from and all of that? So thank you for pointing that out. So some of the videos that I've listened to, or some of my research that I've done, there's this statement that you always make, that people are more creative and innovative during crisis. You and your team, you know, because of your lived experience, and specifically you back in Zimbabwe and all that you faced. I'm sure if we went through that, we'll be here all day. And all that you faced as international students. So why don't you elaborate on that a little bit for our audience out there that are listening, what that really means, because I think that's quite profound.
Yeah, no, I think that's been majority of my lifetime. That's been my experiences. I think I was born not in crisis per se, but surrounded by crisis. So being raised in Zimbabwe, we had the second highest hyperinflation in the world ever recorded. We got to a point where we're printing $1 trillion notes, $100 trillion notes, because the inflation was just, I think at one point, like it was, daily rate was around 200%, right? So if you had $100 today, tomorrow it's worth $50. So you're losing that value instantly. And it was a chaotic period whereby financial insecurity was one of those things that we had to go through. And that's, to me, was one of the first experiences that I had, that in times of crisis, people are the most creative and innovative, right? I saw a wider adoption of alternative finance, such as community savings, because people moved away from the big banks and the centralized systems into community savings, something that was decentralized, something that they controlled, something that they had more visibility into, because they just believed that the system that they trusted for so long had failed them, right? So it was kind of like having that experience of like, when people are in crisis, they become very innovative, because it becomes, your nature becomes more survival more than anything, and you're able to bring solutions that actually are more sustainable and actually benefits a wider group of people, rather than just kind of like the small number of people. So I think that was kind of like the biggest experience. And it also correlates to this question that even us today, we try to be able to have conversations, ask people around why save with a bank that you can't borrow from. Right. Around that time, it was that same curiosity and question. Like, hey, I'm a customer with this bank, I save money, and then because probably I'm not a high income earner, or because I'm not this, I'm not able to borrow. But when you look at banking at its core, is just pooled community savings or pooled national savings, and then they decide how they allocate based on their underwriting and risk models. But now, if I'm just contributing to the borrowing effect and where I can benefit from it, what's in it for me? Right. So that's why when you see people using things such as community banking, community saving system, is a system whereby I'm contributing and I'm also benefiting at the same time. It's a win-win equation, and you're able to participate much more fluently. And I think that's kind of like where you see these models and this innovation coming out of crisis. And it's just something that is so powerful.
Well, all those hours that you guys got together, seems like you were thinking about all, the scenarios or the questions that, are on people's minds. So, good job. That time well spent. And you were able to come up with something so authentic. So you already mentioned that your parents were entrepreneurs themselves. And how has that experience shaped you into the entrepreneur that you are? Because definitely, whether you are actively learning or passively learning, you I'll think that you kind of learned something from them that you were able to apply now that you have your own business.
Yeah, no, I think from an entrepreneurial background, I think that's the best thing, apart from values and morals, that's the best thing that my parents gave me in terms of skills and visibility. Because like I grew up from a young age, I've never seen my parents as employees. Nothing wrong with that. It was just a good experience of seeing how you operate something, how you're able to build a business. And as kids, I still remember my dad was very strict, right? Like every time, he didn't want you to feel like, there's always this mentality like, oh, hey, I'm the boss's son, or like every day, 5:30 a.m., you have to be up.
Wow.
And you have to be on the ground, even if you're not physically doing anything. So my parents were commercial agricultural farmers. So we had 200 employees, and then just being able to go there and actually just see what things are, how things are being conducted, being able to contribute, being able to ask questions, have conversations. It actually enabled me to learn things such as being grounded in terms of like hierarchy, just being able to see people for who they are.
Right.
And I think the biggest transferable skills from that was people management, right? Because my parents were into agriculture, I'm into financial services and technology, but you can see like you still have to manage people, and how you approach people is going to be your biggest asset, because your people, the way you work with people is going to dictate the culture that you have as a company. It's going to dictate the retention or people leaving, the people that you attract. So it's a very powerful thing that you need to be able to have and have a better understanding on. So seeing my parents do that was very interesting. But it also reminds me of a conversation that I had with my primary teacher back in primary school.
Yeah.
Where they will always ask, what do you want to do when you grow up?
Yeah.
And I think in my class, I think we're about 47, I was the only one who said a businessman.
Good for
And then
you.
people laughed, right? Because it wasn't specific, like businessman
Right.
for what? Because other people were saying pilot, doctor, lawyer, accountant. But my teacher stand in like, hey, that's actually a great answer, something to aspire to.
Right.
Because if you want to be a pilot, if you want to be a doctor, who's going to offer you that employment if there are no business people?
True.
Right. So like, it has always resonated in me in terms of like, how do you build infrastructures that empower and enable other people? And I think seeing that from an early age from my parents really cultivated that nature of risk-taking, that nature of sacrifice, and then long-term thinking, which is really powerful.
That business mindset, I feel like it's something, personally, in my opinion, I feel like it's something that's lacking in our, I shouldn't say maybe immigrant community, but my community, because growing up, people, my peers, they wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a doctor, okay? But I don't think I ever had anyone saying, I want to be a business person, right? I want to do business. So I think it's nice to start instilling those values, right, in our, in the next generation. They can still be whatever they want to be, but look at you, right? Your mind was set because you saw what your parents were doing, and I'm sure you admired them, and you're like, oh yeah, I want to be like them. So if you hadn't had that, you probably wouldn't be in the position that you're here today, right? Changing lives. So just encouraging our communities out there just to start teaching our kids, because then it goes a long way, right? Those are things you could apply even to your own personal life.
Yeah.
Things like budgeting, saving and all of that. I didn't have that opportunity to learn that early on, and you pay for that.
Exactly.
Right? And those are not things that are taught in school. So I guess as parents, as communities, we have to take that time to educate, provide knowledge, right? To not just kids, even I'm sure adults like us, right? So I'm happy that you decided, I don't want to do this anymore. I was meant to do business. And then you pursued that. Thank you. Okay, so looking back in your life, and all that we've discussed here today on this podcast, How would you describe all of that in one word?
One word. So for me, the one word would be development.
I like that. And why?
And the reason why I go with development, I have kind of like this mental model of how I think about things, just kind of like from a historical and then looking into the future. It's just for me to be here, a pathway was paved for me to be here in terms of the freedoms that I have, in terms of the freedoms that I benefit from. Some people had to sacrifice for that. And I think we are at a very pivotal moment for this new generation to be able to also sacrifice in terms of the development infrastructure that we're able to provide for ourselves. So for me, I see it from a lens, I'm an African. I come from one of the, if not the poorest continent on planet Earth, and there's a lot of work to be done. Me going into entrepreneurship from an early age, I knew I was going to be so bad starting out because I didn't have the experience. But I knew by consistently focusing on one thing, I could learn and develop myself and be better and be the best version of myself over time. It was taking a long-term thinking and sacrificing a stable career, sacrificing things that you don't get when you're taking that risk away, when you're taking risk in terms of starting a business. But it was really understanding the nature of the community, the nature of one thing that I would like to be able to provide to the community. And I think entrepreneurship is one of the strongest backbones that we can have in any community in terms of development. So that's why I see development as at the core of everything that I do, whether it's the support that I want to see my family benefit from, whether it's the support that the nation that I came from benefit from, whether it's just in terms of like the skills and the knowledge that you can be able to share, whether it's kind of like in the Canadian economy, right? We have a lot of like struggles. Immigrants are coming here. People are not really benefiting from this dream. So if you can just build an infrastructure that enables other people to develop, it doesn't have to only be from a Woveo perspective. It can also be from the storytelling perspective of like, how do you take a risk? What does it take to be able to make that jump? Because at the end of the day, to your question that you were mentioning before, like, hey, in our community, we need to take more risk, right? I think understandably so, immigrants, sometimes you can feel, as an immigrant, you can feel that I've taken enough risk by leaving my country to come into another country. And sometimes you want to just protect yourself from that traumatic experience. But I think there's so much you can benefit from by taking that experience as a skill, as an experience that you've already had, to be able to take it into the next generation. I think it's for us, we're just in a time whereby probably the life that we have to live is a life of risk-taking to be able to make that jump, because you never can make that jump from one generation or one point to another without taking that risk. So if you're an immigrant, you've already taken that risk. How do you continue taking that risk? Because that risk probably has been the most successful period of your time in terms of like living conditions. Now you're in Canada, better health system, better lifestyle, better everything. What if you just make that jump again in terms of the risk, whether it's entrepreneurial or whatever the case might be? You can just find that there's more to yourself than what you're just limiting yourself to. So that's why I always center around development.
So talking about development, that brings me to this question. You guys started somewhere as a company. You guys are not stopping, right? So what is the future goal for Woveo? Like, where do you see your company in the next, say, 5-10 years? Because you mentioned as well that you need to make those short-term and long-term goals and be realistic about them. So you're not planning to get there in 1 year, right? Be realistic about the goals that you set. So where do you see Woveo in the next maybe 5 or 10 years?
5 or 10 years.
In terms of development.
In terms of no, for us, our niche is around community banking. And how we see it in terms of a vision is we want to be the best community banking platform globally.
Awesome.
That's kind of like how we see, that's the vision that we have. Because this system is a system that is used by 1.4 billion people around the globe. In Canada, it's hundreds of thousands, millions of people who leverage the system. But when you look at it from a global perspective, the opportunity, it's massive. So for us, it was just how do we build, learn, and launch in Canada and use it as our governance backbone and start expanding globally, because there are so many people who are credit underserved globally. I think it's around $33 trillion credit gap. But when you look at credit, it's just a system that enables people, especially low-income people, people who don't have something, just to be able to make that leap from one thing to the other, whether it's a student loan, right?
Right.
I'm a student, I'm the master's student in my class, but I don't have the financial capacity to do that. Credit can enable you to be able to make that jump. Or, hey, I have this wild, very interesting business idea that can actually change the impact within my community, because I know how things are run. And if I have access to credit, I can be able to make that jump. So I think community banking can be able to solve how we centralize credit, and then how credit is being distributed into communities so that people can benefit from their own resources.
Nice. And we're in a society driven by credit.
Yeah.
And that's usually one of the culture shocks. And a lot of people lack that, of course, the awareness. They don't have the know-how, the knowledge. And that's how a lot of immigrants, we find ourselves running into, huge amount of debt, right?
Yeah.
Because you pay when you get that credit card, and you don't know how to manage it. Just know you're going to pay for that 2-3 years down the road. So we need more awareness being created. Yes, it's a credit-driven society, and we're not used to it back home. So how, as a community, can we empower ourselves, like especially for new immigrants? So thank you. So Jonah, how can people access your platform, individuals, communities?
Yeah, so as an individual, you can be able to access our platform. It's a mobile application, so it's available on both the App Store if you have an iPhone, or the Google Play Store if you have an Android phone. And you can be able to download it, register, and you can join the Woveo community, because there are individuals who don't have communities. So we created a Woveo community where we can help people without communities in terms of getting started and then finding kind of like their tribe, you would say. And then if you're a community, reach out to us directly. You can be able to reach out to us at info@woveo.com, and then we can be able to help onboard the full community. So you can reach out to us via email, and then we can be able to help you with the onboarding process. We have an onboarding team that ensure that you have the right training, the right documentation, and then the right support to be able to make the onboarding from a community perspective seamless and easy for everyone to understand, because we understand that there's technology gaps. Not everyone knows how to use this mobile application, so we try to make that as easy as possible.
Right. Okay. So do your research and try it when you figure out if this is for you. Okay.
Exactly.
So food for the mind. So Jonah, with all the experience that you have, and I know you're not stopping, because another thing that you mentioned is you do your research and look at what other people have done in the past, right? So what would be that great piece of advice to young aspiring entrepreneurs out there to in the immigrants community?
Yeah, no, my biggest advice would be, I always try to share advice from my lived experiences. And then the biggest thing is, for me, dreaming big. It's something that's coming to Canada and being part of like a big ecosystem. You tend to underestimate yourself, underestimate what you can do. And you always hear about this notion like dream big, but how do you really dream big? So that's kind of like how I approach it. And then in terms of dreaming big, I think there are 4 key elements that I look at that has worked for me. One is finding your purpose. I think if you're able to find something that drives you just beyond the financial returns, and then like it's a purpose whereby like, if I'm able to solve this, I'll be happy with myself. Or even better, if I'm able to attempt solving this, and if I fail, I'll be happy with my decision. I think that's how I'll define finding your purpose. Is that attempt. It's not the guaranteed success. It's that attempt that I've attempted, and then I'm happy with the outcomes of that risk that I took, or in terms of finding my purpose. And then the second piece would be around risk taking. I think the risk taking is all about taking that jumping into the unknowns. I know some of the audience might be Christians. We always speak about the element of faith. I think risk taking and faith go hand in hand. because you don't know what's next. You don't know how you're going to get provision. You don't know how you're going to make the sales. You don't know how you're going to provide for yourself. So it's so many unknowns, but then just believing and taking that risk. And then now, once you're taking that risk, always have a plan, but then just be able to take that risk, because in taking that risk, you would find there's more to yourself. You're able to push more. You're able to push yourself more into those uncomfortable situations that you're able to grow really fast.
Oh, yeah.
So always take that risk and then be able to build on it and then kind of like execute in terms of achieving your vision. The third one, really, especially when you're taking that risk, is asking for help. One of the biggest advice that I received from my friend's mother, Daniel's mom, is a closed mouth is a closed destiny. So always ask for help, whether it's money, whether it's team members, whether it's government support. Don't be afraid to ask for help, because people are more willing to help than what you would imagine. So always take that risk in terms of asking help as well. So always be able to approach people, and you would find that you would be able to find people who are willing to help in terms of achieving your goals. And the last piece will be long-term thinking. Now, you're taking a risk, you're asking for help. How can you be able to focus on one thing? And my favorite statement, I think that has been part of my experiences, is we overestimate what we can do in a year, but underestimate what we can do in 10 years, right? We all make like our annual yearly resolutions, but then if you can be able to approach things from a decade, I think you can be able to find powerful transformation. You can be able to find compounding effect in terms of your skills and whatever you're building. It's the same thing even if you look at it, our education system, right? You go to primary school or high school for 6 years or 8 years. If you're able to look at the growth that you have because you're focusing on just one thing or a few specific subjects or career, you're able to grow so much. So how can you be able to have long-term thinking as part of your plan in terms of like, I'm going to approach this is going to be my core focus, and I'm going to persevere until this thing works. And I think you can be able to find amazing results. So I think that has been part of my experiences, part of my story. Been doing this 3 years going into 4, and the results have been beyond our wildest dreams. So we just keep pushing, taking that risk, believing, and working with the right people. I think you can build amazing things.
Wow, that was amazing. That segment was loaded with lots of nuggets. Thank you so much, Jonah, for being on this platform. So dream big. Dream big comes with a lot of work. And it's not something that you do overnight. It's progressive. You have short-term and long-term goals. Try to meet those short-term goals in order to get to your long-term goal, which is not one minute, but 5, 10, Woveo, they're not stopping. They already have a plan, and we can't wait to see where that's leading. And I'm a believer that they will impact a lot of individuals and communities. Thank you so much, Jonah, for being with us on this platform. Good luck in all that you and your team are doing and all your future endeavors. I appreciate your time here today. We look forward to having more working relationship between Medan Productions and Woveo in the future. I appreciate your time here today.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. All right, so you have been listening to Our Lives Narratives, and this segment is specifically Our Lives Narratives on the Road. So we're taking this platform across Canada, and we started here in Calgary. If you're looking for a great spot this summer for vacation, check Calgary out. All right, we appreciate your time here this evening, and we'll continue to bring stories like Jonahs and his team to continue to uplift the immigrant communities and to inspire all of our listeners and our viewers out there. Continue to follow us on all our social media platforms at Medan Productions on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. And don't forget to check out all of our episodes on our YouTube channel as well, Medan Productions. Until our next episode, we say thank you for your time and have a good evening. Bye-bye.